What if I told you the safest place on Earth has no light, no sound, and weighs millions of tons directly above your head? Your brain would call that a nightmare. But your body? Your body would call it home. Every single night, you pull blankets over yourself and make the world smaller, darker, quieter. You're not just going to sleep. You're remembering something your ancestors knew. You're building a cave. Before we go deeper into this journey, do me a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss tomorrow's story. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing how this community spans the globe. Now, let's talk about caves. Humans have been crawling into dark spaces for rest since before we were fully human. Our ancestors, the ones who walked upright but still remembered the trees, they found caves, and something in their bodies said, yes, this is right. This is safe. This is home. It wasn't logic. It was something deeper, something that lives in the part of your brain that still remembers being small and vulnerable under an open sky, filled with things that hunted in the night. A cave is Earth's way of holding you. Think about your bed at home, how you pile up pillows and blankets until you've created a little cave of fabric and softness. You're not just lying down, you're enclosing yourself. You're recreating something ancient, something that whispers through your DNA, like an old song you can't quite remember, but somehow know all the words too. The planet is full of these spaces, millions of them, carved by water and time into the bones of mountains and beneath flat plains where you'd never expect them. Some are massive, cathedral-like spaces where you could fit an entire city block. Others are tight squeezes, passages where the rock touches your shoulders on both sides, like a parent guiding a child through a crowd. And deep inside all of them, past the entrance where sunlight fades and the temperature drops and the sounds of the surface world die away, there's a quality to the darkness that doesn't exist anywhere else. It's not the darkness of your bedroom at night, where light pollution seeps around curtains and your phone glows on the nightstand. It's not the darkness of closing your eyes, where your eyelids still register the difference between facing a lamp and facing a wall. Cave darkness is absolute. It's the darkness that existed before the first star ignited. It's the darkness between galaxies. It's the darkness that will outlast every sun. And here's the strange thing. That darkness, that complete and total absence of light, it doesn't frighten us the way we think it should. When people spend time in deep caves, after their eyes stop searching for light that isn't there, after their pupils dilate as wide as they can go and still find nothing, something unexpected happens. They relax. The constant work of processing visual information stops. The brain, freed from its endless job of interpreting light and shadow and color and movement, it settles into a different mode, a quieter mode. We spend our lives surrounded by light, screens and street lamps, and the glow of LEDs on every device. Our eyes never truly rest. Even when we sleep, light presses against our eyelids, and our brains register it, catalog it, stay partially alert to it. But in a cave, in real darkness, that stops. The visual centers of your brain finally, truly, completely rest. This is where we're going, not just into caves, but into understanding why these spaces call to something deep in us. Why the thought of being held by stone, surrounded by darkness, breathing air that hasn't seen sunlight in 10,000 years. Why that thought doesn't terrify us. Why, instead, it sounds like exactly what we need. The Earth has been creating perfect sleeping chambers since long before humans existed to use them. And tonight, we're going to explore why they work so well. Your body is fighting a war right now. A quiet war you never think about. It's trying to stay at exactly 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, and the world keeps trying to change that number. Too hot, and you sweat. Too cold, and you shiver. Your body burns energy all night long, just maintaining that perfect temperature while you sleep. Unless you're in a cave. Walk into any cave, anywhere on Earth, and you'll notice something within the first 100 feet. The temperature stops changing. It doesn't matter if it's summer or winter outside. Doesn't matter if you're in Arizona or Alaska. Once you're deep enough, past the zone where surface air can reach, the temperature settles into a constant range. Usually somewhere between 50 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit. And it stays there, not kind of stable, not mostly consistent, perfectly, absolutely, unchangingly stable. This happens because rock is an incredible insulator and an even better thermal battery. The temperature of a deep cave matches the average annual temperature of the region above it. All those hot summer days and freezing winter nights, they average out into one number, and the rock holds that number like a secret. 10 feet down, the rock doesn't know what season it is. 100 feet down, it doesn't know what year it is. For your sleeping body, this is paradise. Think about what happens in your bedroom. The heater kicks on, and the air gets too warm. You throw off blankets, then it shuts off, and the air cools too much. You pull them back on. Your body constantly adjusts, constantly works, constantly uses energy to maintain its core temperature against an environment that won't stop fluctuating. You never fully rest. In a cave, that stops. Your body finds its equilibrium quickly. 55 degrees is cool enough that you need covering, warm enough that you're not fighting cold. Your metabolism settles into its lowest sustainable gear. Ancient humans understood this without knowing the science. They didn't need thermostats or climate control. They had stone. Archaeological sites show us exactly where people slept in caves. Not near the entrance where temperature swings still occurred. Not in the deepest chambers where moisture collected. They chose spots about 30 to 50 feet in, where the air stayed dry and the temperature stayed constant, and the darkness was complete. But the way out was still close enough to feel safe. These weren't random choices. These were people who understood their bodies, who knew that good sleep required specific conditions, and who found those conditions in rock. Your ancestors spent thousands of generations sleeping in these spaces. Their bodies adapted to expect certain things: stable temperature, complete darkness, the particular quality of air that moves slowly through stone passages. And your body still expects those things. It still knows, somewhere deep in its cellular memory, what perfect sleeping conditions feel like. When you can't sleep in your climate-controlled bedroom, when you toss and turn despite your expensive mattress and blackout curtains, part of the problem might be that you're too comfortable. Not physically, but environmentally. Your bedroom is trying too hard. The temperature is adjustable, The air is filtered, everything is optimized. But optimization isn't what your body wants. Your body wants consistency. It wants the kind of environmental stability that only exists naturally in one place. Underground, surrounded by stone that hasn't changed temperature in centuries. Breathing air that doesn't rush or gust, but simply exists, still and patient, and exactly the same as it was yesterday and will be tomorrow. Silence isn't the absence of sound. Real silence is something else entirely. And most people will never experience it. You think your bedroom is quiet at night, but it's not. The refrigerator hums 3 rooms away. Air moves through vents. The house settles and creaks. Cars pass on distant streets. Your ears are so used to these sounds that your brain filters them out. But they're there, and your nervous system registers every single one. In a deep cave, sound works differently. Drop a pebble, and you'll hear it hit the ground. But the sound doesn't echo the way you expect. It just stops. Dead. The rock absorbs it instantly. Speak out loud, and your voice sounds flat, contained, like you're talking inside your own head. There's no reverberation, no acoustic feedback. Sound waves hit stone and die. This happens because cave walls aren't smooth. At a microscopic level, they're rough, porous, filled with tiny gaps and irregularities. When sound waves hit this surface, they don't bounce back. They enter those tiny spaces and get trapped, their energy dissipating into heat so small you couldn't measure it with any instrument. The rock eats sound. In some caves, particularly those with high ceilings and moisture on the walls, you can experience something called acoustic deadness. It's beyond quiet. It's the sensation that sound itself has been removed from reality. Scientists who study these spaces report feeling disoriented at first. Your brain expects sound to behave in certain ways, to bounce and reflect, and give you information about the size and shape of the space around you. When that doesn't happen, when sound just vanishes, your spatial awareness falters. But give it a few minutes, and something extraordinary occurs. Your hearing sharpens. Without background noise, without the constant wash of ambient sound, your ears become sensitive to the smallest vibrations. You can hear your own heartbeat, not as a feeling in your chest, but as an actual sound. You can hear blood moving through the vessels near your ears. You can hear the tiny movements of air in your lungs between breaths. You become aware of the sounds your body makes constantly, sounds that are always there, but always drowned out by the world. This is what meditation teachers try to achieve with white noise machines and soundproof rooms. They're attempting to recreate the acoustic environment of a cave. The complete absence of external sound forces your attention inward. Your mind, with nothing to process from outside, begins to process itself. Thoughts that usually hide beneath the noise of daily life surface and become clear. Sleep in this environment is different. Your brain doesn't need to maintain its acoustic surveillance network. The part of your nervous system that stays partially alert, listening for threats or changes or anything unusual, it can finally shut down completely. There's nothing to hear. Nothing is coming. No sound will surprise you. For the first time since you were born, your auditory system can rest. People who spend extended time in caves report that when they return to the surface, Normal environments feel violently loud. A conversation sounds like shouting. A car engine sounds like an explosion. Their hearing has recalibrated to silence, and it takes days to adjust back to the constant noise we accept as normal. But during that time in the cave, during those hours or days of true quiet, they sleep more deeply than they ever have in their lives. Caves breathe, not like you breathe, not in and out, with lungs and intention, but they move air in ways that follow rhythms older than any living thing. Stand at a cave entrance on a cold morning, and you'll feel it. Air flowing out, warm and steady, like the earth is exhaling. Come back in the evening, and the flow reverses. Cool air sinks in, drawn by pressure differences you can't see, but your body registers immediately. This happens because air has weight. Cold air weighs more than warm air, and caves maintain that constant temperature we talked about earlier, while the surface world heats and cools with the sun. During the day, when outside air warms up, it becomes lighter than the air in the cave. The cave air, heavier and cooler, flows out through lower openings, while warmer surface air is pulled in through higher ones. At night, the process reverses. It's called barometric breathing, and it happens continuously, a slow exchange between the cave system and the atmosphere above. Deep inside, past the zone where surface air reaches, the movement becomes subtler, but never stops completely. Air circulates through passages and chambers, following pressure gradients so gentle they take hours to complete a cycle. A cubic meter of air might take a week to move from one chamber to another through a narrow passage. It's not wind, it's not even a breeze. It's something slower, more patient, more like the movement of honey than the movement of air. Your lungs do something similar when you sleep. During deep sleep, your breathing slows down, way down. Where you might take 15 breaths per minute while awake, during the deepest phase of sleep, that number drops to 8 or 9. Your body needs less oxygen because your metabolism has downshifted into maintenance mode. You're not moving, not thinking hard, not processing much of anything. Your breath becomes shallow, quiet, barely there. In a cave, breathing matches the environment automatically. The air pressure is stable, the temperature is constant, and the air itself moves so slowly that your body synchronizes with it without trying. Your breath slows to match the pace of air circulation around you. It's not something you do consciously. It's something that happens when your nervous system finally finds an environment that isn't constantly changing, constantly demanding adjustment, constantly keeping you alert. There's another factor. Cave air is usually saturated with moisture, sitting right at 100% humidity in many deep chambers. This means the air in your lungs doesn't have to work to humidify itself. Normally, every breath you take, your respiratory system adds moisture to that air before it reaches your lungs. It's a constant process that uses energy and water. In a cave, that air is already humid. Your lungs can relax that function, conserve that energy. Ancient people who lived in caves didn't just sleep there randomly. They chose specific chambers, specific depths, where the air circulation was optimal. Not stagnant, which could lead to carbon dioxide buildup, but not drafty either, which would disturb rest. They found spots where the air moved just enough to stay fresh, but so slowly you couldn't feel it moving. Spots where breathing felt effortless, where each inhale and exhale cost your body almost nothing, where sleep could deepen beyond what's possible in the chaotic air of the surface world. Weight is comforting. This sounds wrong until you think about it. Weighted blankets sell by the millions because people sleep better with 15 or 20 pounds pressing down on them. Babies stop crying when you swaddle them tight. Anxiety decreases when pressure increases. Your nervous system interprets gentle, constant pressure as safety, and nobody knows exactly why, but the effect is undeniable. Now imagine that pressure coming from every direction. Not crushing, not threatening, but present. Solid, unchanging. That's what a cave wall feels like when you rest against it. Behind you is billions of tons of rock, and somehow this doesn't feel dangerous. It feels like being held. The technical term is deep pressure stimulation. It triggers your parasympathetic nervous system, the part that handles rest and recovery. Your heart rate drops. Your breathing deepens. Stress hormones decrease. This happens automatically when your body feels contained, surrounded, protected by something larger than itself. A cave provides this sensation at a scale no human-made structure can match. Think about how you sleep in a big, empty room versus a small, cozy one. The small room wins almost every time. You don't want space when you sleep. You want boundaries. You want to know where the edges are. Your ancestors sleeping in caves didn't choose the massive cathedral chambers. They chose alcoves, smaller passages, spots where they could touch the walls on multiple sides. They built their sleeping areas into corners where the rock created natural barriers. This wasn't about defense, not primarily. Yes, a small entrance is easier to guard than a large one, but the real benefit was psychological. When you sleep, you're vulnerable. Your conscious mind shuts down. Your body paralyzes itself during REM sleep so you don't act out dreams. Evolution built these systems, knowing you needed to feel absolutely safe before allowing them to activate fully. And feeling safe means feeling contained. Modern bedrooms fail at this. They're too open, too exposed. You compensate by building a nest of pillows and blankets, creating artificial boundaries. But it's not the same. Fabric shifts. Pillows fall. The boundaries you create before sleep don't last through the night. A cave wall doesn't move. It was there 1,000 years ago. It will be there 1,000 years from now. Your sleeping brain recognizes this permanence and trusts it in ways it can never fully trust a pillow. There's also the simple fact of being underground. Above you is rock, earth, the weight of the world, and this should feel threatening, but doesn't. Instead, it feels like being beneath something that will shield you from everything else. No storm can reach you here, no temperature extreme, no danger from above. You're protected by the most massive structure imaginable, one that's been standing since long before humans existed and will stand long after. People who spend nights in caves report dreams that feel different, more vivid, more emotionally intense, more memorable. This might be because the body achieves deeper sleep stages when it feels truly protected. Your brain, confident that your sleeping body is safe allows itself to process memories and emotions more thoroughly than it can when part of your nervous system is staying alert for threats that might or might not exist in your bedroom at home. There are animals that live their entire lives in complete darkness, and they've solved sleep in ways that make human rest look chaotic and inefficient. Cave salamanders, for instance, can go months without eating. Their metabolism runs so slowly that one meal sustains them through what would be multiple human lifetimes worth of energy expenditure. They don't rush. They don't waste movement. They exist in a state that's somewhere between awake and asleep, a middle ground that humans can only touch briefly during meditation. These creatures evolved in environments where energy is scarce. No sunlight means no plants, which means no herbivores, which means very little food of any kind. The successful cave animals are the ones that learned to need almost nothing. Their heart rates are barely measurable. Their breathing occurs in intervals so long you'd think they'd stopped. They've mastered something humans struggle with constantly: the ability to simply be still without burning through resources. Take the OLM, a blind salamander that lives in underwater caves in Europe. It can survive without food for up to 10 years. 10 years. It does this by dropping its metabolic rate to nearly nothing, entering a state that's not quite hibernation, but not quite normal activity either. Its cells work in slow motion. Its body temperature matches the water around it exactly, requiring no energy to maintain. It moves only when necessary, sometimes staying in the same spot for months. This is what your body wants to do when you sleep, but it can't quite get there. Your metabolism drops during deep sleep, yes, but only by about 15%. Your core temperature decreases by a degree or two. Your heart rate slows, but you're still burning energy at a rate these cave creatures would consider wasteful. Why? Because your environment won't let you do otherwise. Your bedroom temperature fluctuates. Sounds occur randomly. Light levels change if a car passes outside. Your body has to maintain systems to monitor and respond to these changes, even while you sleep. You can't fully shut down because your environment isn't stable enough to allow it. But in a cave, in that perfectly constant temperature, that absolute darkness, that deep silence, your metabolism could theoretically drop much further. Your body could approach something closer to the efficiency these animals achieve naturally. Hibernating mammals do this seasonally. Bears in winter dens, which are essentially caves, drop their heart rate from 40 beats per minute to 8. Their breathing slows to one breath every 45 seconds. They don't eat, don't drink, don't urinate for months. Their bodies recycle everything, operating in a closed loop that requires minimal energy input. The cave environment makes this possible. The stable temperature means they don't waste energy on thermoregulation. The darkness means their circadian rhythms shut down completely. They enter a state where time becomes irrelevant. Humans can't hibernate, not naturally, but we can approach something similar. In studies where people spend extended time in caves without time cues, their sleep patterns change dramatically. They sleep longer, deeper, in cycles that stretch beyond the normal 24 hours. Their bodies, freed from the tyranny of sunrise and sunset, from alarm clocks and schedules, find their own rhythms, and those rhythms are slower, deeper, more aligned with the patient pace of cave life than with the frantic speed of the surface world. Water doesn't care about time. It has no deadlines, no urgency, no concept of fast or slow. It simply moves, and eventually it goes everywhere. In caves, this patience becomes visible. You can see what water accomplishes when it has 10,000 years to work with, and the answer is everything. Every cave you've ever heard of was created by water, not by force, not by violence, but by the chemical process of slightly acidic water dissolving limestone molecule by molecule. A single drop of water might dissolve a few microscopic particles of stone. That same drop, repeated 1 billion times over centuries, carves a passage big enough to walk through. Do that for 1 million years, and you get cathedral chambers where the ceiling disappears into darkness above you. Underground streams still flow through most cave systems, continuing the work that created them. These aren't the rushing rivers of the surface. They move slowly, almost imperceptibly, following paths that might take decades to complete. A molecule of water entering a cave system might not exit for 100 years. It seeps through cracks, collects in pools, flows through passages so narrow you couldn't slide a credit card through them, and gradually works its way through the rock. Listen to an underground stream and you'll hear something different from surface water. There's no rush, no white noise of rapids or waterfalls. It's individual drops, distinct sounds separated by seconds or minutes. Each drop hits stone that's been shaped by trillions of drops before it, landing in exactly the same spot, continuing a process that predates human civilization and will continue long after it's gone. This is meditation made physical. The water teaches you what it means to work without hurrying, to accomplish massive things through small actions repeated endlessly. Your mind wants to rush, wants results now, wants to see progress immediately. The water doesn't care what your mind wants. It will take 5,000 years to carve another inch deeper into the stone, and that's fine. It has time. People who spend extended periods near underground streams report their thoughts slowing to match the pace of the water. Not in a mystical sense, but in a practical one. When the only consistent sound is a drop hitting stone every few seconds, your brain starts timing itself to that rhythm. Your thoughts arrive, exist, and pass away between drops. You become aware of the spaces between thoughts, the gaps that normally get filled with anxiety or planning or remembering. The water creates a framework where those gaps can expand, where silence between thoughts becomes longer than the thoughts themselves. This affects sleep in unexpected ways. The sound of an underground stream is too slow and irregular to be white noise, but it's not random either. It has pattern without being predictable, rhythm without being repetitive. Your brain can't tune it out completely, but it doesn't need to process it actively either. It exists in that perfect middle ground where your auditory system stays gently engaged without becoming alert. The water is going somewhere, but it's in no rush to get there. It will arrive eventually. Maybe in a year, maybe in a century. The timeline doesn't matter. What matters is the movement itself, the patient journey through stone, the slow reshaping of the world one molecule at a time. And when you sleep near that sound, your mind begins to understand that your thoughts can move the same way, slowly, patiently, without force or hurry, just flowing. The most beautiful things in caves grow so slowly you couldn't watch them form even if you lived 1,000 years. Crystals hang from ceilings and rise from floors in shapes that seem impossible. Structures so delicate, they look like they'd shatter if you breathed too hard near them. But they're not delicate. They're the result of millions of years of water depositing minerals one molecule at a time, building structures more patient than anything alive. A stalactite, the formation that hangs down from a cave ceiling, grows at roughly 1 centimeter every 100 years. Think about that. 1 centimeter per century. The stalactites you see in photographs, the ones that stretch several feet from ceiling toward floor, are tens of thousands of years old. They were forming when mammoths walked above them. They were forming when humans were still learning to make fire. They're still forming now, growing at a pace so slow that the entire span of human civilization represents just a few inches of growth. This happens through a process so simple, it seems like it shouldn't create anything beautiful. Water seeps through soil and rock above the cave, picking up dissolved calcium carbonate along the way. When it reaches the cave ceiling and hangs there as a drop, carbon dioxide escapes into the cave air. This tiny chemical change causes a microscopic amount of calcium carbonate to precipitate out, leaving behind a ring of mineral slightly smaller than a human hair. The drop falls, another takes its place, another ring forms. Do this 10 million times, and you have a stalactite. The formations don't just grow down, they grow up too. Each drop that falls from the ceiling hits the floor and deposits more mineral. Stalagmites build from the ground, reaching upward at the same impossible pace. Sometimes, after 50,000 years or more, they meet in the middle. A column forms, connecting floor to ceiling, a structure that took more time to create than humans have existed as a species. What does this have to do with sleep? Everything. These crystals are proof that the most profound changes happen slowly, imperceptibly, through processes so gradual you can't observe them in real time. You can't watch a stalactite grow. You can't see the daily progress. But it's happening, constantly, without pause, without acceleration, without any awareness of time passing. Your body rebuilds itself the same way. Every night during deep sleep, your cells repair damage accumulated during the day. Proteins fold, DNA corrects errors, memories consolidate. None of this happens quickly. You can't feel it occurring. But over years and decades, this nightly maintenance determines whether you age well or poorly, whether your mind stays sharp or degrades, whether your body remains resilient or breaks down. The crystals teach you that growth and healing don't need to be fast to be effective. They just need to be constant. One molecule at a time, one night of sleep at a time, one microscopic repair at a time. Given enough repetition, given enough patience, these tiny incremental changes create structures of staggering complexity and beauty. When you sleep in a cave, surrounded by formations that have been growing since before recorded history, your body remembers this truth. Time isn't the enemy. Slowness isn't failure. The most enduring things are built gradually, patiently, without rush or force, through processes that trust in repetition rather than speed. Every breath you take in a cave tastes different. Not strongly, not in a way you'd notice consciously at first, but your lungs know. The air has a quality that doesn't exist on the surface, a combination of factors that makes breathing feel effortless in ways that are hard to describe, but impossible to forget once you've experienced them. Start with humidity. Cave air sits at near saturation, usually between 90 and 100% relative humidity. This means the air is holding almost as much water vapor as it possibly can at that temperature. On the surface, this level of humidity would feel oppressive, sticky, uncomfortable. But in a cave, at that constant 55 degrees, it feels neutral. Your respiratory system doesn't have to add moisture to the air before it reaches your lungs. Every breath comes pre-humidified, requiring zero energy from your body to process. This matters more than you'd think. Your lungs are lined with a thin layer of mucus that needs to stay moist to function properly. In dry air, your respiratory system constantly works to maintain that moisture, evaporating water from your body with every exhale. Over a night of breathing dry bedroom air, you can lose a significant amount of water this way. In a cave, that loss stops. Your lungs can maintain their moisture balance without effort, freeing up energy for actual rest and repair. Then, there's what's in the air beyond water vapor. Cave air contains microscopic particles of the minerals that make up the rock around you. Calcium carbonate mostly, the same mineral that forms stalactites, but also traces of other elements depending on the geology. These particles are incredibly fine, measured in microns, too small to see or feel. But your lungs register them. Studies of people who work in limestone caves show their respiratory systems adapt to expect these particles, almost like the air has weight or substance that regular air lacks. This isn't pollution. These particles are chemically stable, inert, not reactive like the pollutants in city air. They're just presence, a subtle reminder that you're breathing air that has passed through stone, that has been filtered and processed by rock instead of by trees or ocean or open atmosphere. Your lungs evolved breathing air that passed through and over Earth, not air conditioning units and car exhausts. Cave air is closer to what your respiratory system expects at a deep evolutionary level. The gas composition is different too. Not dramatically, not enough to cause problems, but measurably. Carbon dioxide levels are slightly higher than surface air because there are no plants underground to convert it back to oxygen. But slightly higher CO2 has an interesting effect on human physiology. It makes you breathe deeper, slower, more efficiently. Your body compensates automatically, and the result is breathing patterns that more closely match sleep breathing than waking breathing. Put all these factors together and you get air that your lungs process with minimal effort. No drying, no irritation, no constant adjustment to changing humidity or temperature. Just breath after breath of stable, mineral-rich, perfectly humid air that your respiratory system can work with instead of work against. Your lungs, like every other system in your body, can finally stop compensating, stop adjusting, stop fighting. They can just breathe. Close your eyes right now. You see darkness, but not complete darkness. There's a kind of visual noise, random firings of neurons in your visual cortex, creating faint patterns and colors. Now, imagine that, but with your eyes open. That's what happens in absolute cave darkness after about 30 minutes. Your eyes don't give up when there's no light. They can't. They're designed to detect photons, and when no photons arrive, they start detecting themselves. The cells in your retina generate small electrical charges just from existing, and in complete darkness, your brain begins interpreting these random signals as vision. Scientists call it prisoner's cinema or closed-eye hallucinations, though your eyes aren't closed. They're wide open, pupils dilated to maximum, desperately searching for light that doesn't exist. The patterns start simple. Dots of light, called phosphenes, appear and disappear randomly across your visual field. They're not real. Nothing is emitting light. Your visual system is essentially imagining things to process, because it can't accept that there's nothing to see. After longer exposure, the patterns become more complex. Geometric shapes, swirls, occasionally faces or figures, though these are rare and typically only occur after hours in darkness. This is your brain refusing to shut down systems it thinks it needs. Your visual cortex processes roughly 30% of all sensory information your brain handles. That's a massive amount of neural real estate dedicated to sight. In darkness, that entire system has nothing to do, but it doesn't go idle. It keeps running, keeps processing, keeps trying to create vision from nothing. Eventually, though, something interesting happens. After several hours in complete darkness, your brain starts reallocating resources. The visual cortex begins helping other sensory systems. Your hearing becomes sharper. Your spatial awareness improves. Your sense of touch becomes more sensitive. This is neuroplasticity in real time. Your brain redistributing processing power to systems that are actually receiving useful information. People who've spent days in cave darkness report that when this shift happens, sleep becomes different. Your brain stops wasting energy trying to see and redirects that energy into other processes. Dreams become more auditory than visual. You hear conversations, music, sounds you can't identify. Your sleeping brain, freed from its constant visual processing demands, explores other modes of experience. There's also a practical benefit. Without visual input, your brain produces more melatonin. Light, even small amounts, suppresses melatonin production. Your phone screen at night, the LED on your smoke detector, streetlight through your curtains, all of these reduce the melatonin your pineal gland produces. In absolute cave darkness, melatonin production runs uninterrupted. Your sleep-wake cycle, normally disrupted by the endless artificial light of modern life, resets to something more primal. Your eyes physically relax too. They stop making the tiny, constant adjustments they normally make. The focusing and refocusing as your gaze moves across different distances and light levels. The muscles that control your lens can rest completely. The ciliary muscles, which work constantly during waking hours, finally release their tension. This happens gradually, over hours, But eventually, your eyes exist in a state of complete mechanical rest that's impossible to achieve anywhere light exists. Life exists in caves that shouldn't be alive by any reasonable standard. Bacteria that divide once every 100 years. Fungi that grow so slowly their progress is measured in decades. Organisms that survive on energy sources so minimal that scientists initially thought they were dormant, dead, waiting for better conditions. But they're not waiting. They're just living at a pace that makes trees look frantic. These extremophiles, organisms that thrive in extreme conditions, have stripped life down to its absolute minimum requirements. They don't need sunlight. They don't need organic matter falling from above. Some survive on the energy released when minerals in the rock slowly oxidize. A process so gradual it provides less energy per day than a human gets from a single calorie of food. And yet, they live, they metabolize, they reproduce. They just do it slower than anything else we've ever studied. Take the bacteria found in Lechuguilla Cave in New Mexico. Some species there have been isolated from surface life for over 4 million years. They've evolved in complete darkness, in stable temperatures, with effectively no competition and almost no nutrients. Their metabolic rate is so low that they can survive on the energy equivalent of what humans would get from smelling food, not eating it, just being near it. And they've done this for longer than humans have existed. What does this teach us about rest? These organisms prove that life doesn't require constant activity. They challenge the assumption that metabolism needs to run at a certain minimum speed to sustain life. They exist in a state that's not quite dormancy, but not quite active life either, and they do it indefinitely. They've achieved what every meditation teacher tries to guide you toward, a state of existence that requires almost nothing, that conserves every possible resource, that finds peace in absolute stillness. The fungal networks in caves are equally remarkable. Mycelium spreads through rock at rates measured in centimeters per century, creating networks that might be thousands of years old. These fungi don't fruit, don't produce mushrooms, don't do any of the visible things surface fungi do. They just exist as threads of living cells, processing minerals from rock so slowly that a single meal might take years to digest. They're alive, but barely, existing at the absolute threshold of what life can be. Your body during deep sleep approaches something similar to these organisms. Your metabolism drops to near minimum sustainable levels. Your cells switch from growth and activity to maintenance and repair. You exist in a state where you're using the smallest amount of energy possible while still remaining alive and functional. You become, briefly, something like a cave bacterium, an organism that has learned to survive on almost nothing. The difference is that you can't maintain that state. You have to wake up, return to activity, burn energy at rates these cave organisms would find incomprehensible. But for those hours of deep sleep, especially in environments that support that depth of rest, you touch something similar to what they experience constantly. A state where life persists not through activity and consumption, but through patience and the absolute minimization of need, where existing is enough, where being alive doesn't require doing anything at all. In 1962, a French geologist named Michel Siffre descended into a cave beneath the Alps and stayed there for 2 months with no way to tell time. No clock, no sunlight, no schedule. He wanted to know what would happen to his sense of time if he removed every external cue. The answer surprised everyone, including him. His days got longer. Without sunlight to reset his internal clock, Sifre's circadian rhythm drifted away from 24 hours. Some of his sleep-wake cycles stretched to 30 hours or more. He'd sleep for 14 hours straight, stay awake for 16, and perceive this as a normal day. His body, freed from the tyranny of Earth's rotation, found its own rhythm. And that rhythm was slower, longer, more expansive than the solar day his ancestors evolved under. This experiment has been repeated dozens of times with similar results. People living in caves without time cues consistently develop longer circadian cycles. Their bodies don't just maintain 24-hour rhythms in darkness. They expand beyond them, stretching into cycles that would be completely dysfunctional in normal life, but that feel natural underground. Why does this happen? Nobody knows for certain, but the leading theory involves energy conservation. A 24-hour day is an arbitrary constraint imposed by planetary mechanics. Your body's natural rhythm, its preferred cycle length, when freed from external forcing, appears to be somewhere between 25 and 30 hours. Evolution compressed this into 24 hours because that's what sunlight demanded. But given the freedom to choose, your biology picks something slower. The sleep in these extended cycles is different. People report achieving depths of rest they've never experienced in normal life. They sleep longer, deeper, with more time in the slow wave sleep stages, where actual physical restoration occurs. Their REM periods extend beyond normal limits. Dreams become elaborate, multi-layered experiences that feel like they last for hours, because they actually do. Stefania Fellini, who spent 4 months alone in a New Mexico cave in 1989, eventually settled into a rhythm of sleeping 25 hours and staying awake for 35. Her menstrual cycle stopped completely. Her perception of time became so distorted that when researchers told her she'd been underground for 4 months, she insisted it had only been 2. Her body had found a pace of existence so different from surface life that when she returned, she needed weeks to readjust to normal 24-hour days. These studies reveal something profound about human flexibility. We think of 24-hour days as natural, as hardwired into our biology, but they're not. They're learned. They're enforced by light and social schedules and alarm clocks. Remove those constraints, and your body reveals what it actually wants, which is more time to sleep, more time to wake slowly, more time between one day and the next to simply exist without rushing toward the next sunrise. Your bedroom can't replicate this. Even with blackout curtains and white noise machines, you still know what time it is. You still have obligations that require you to wake at specific hours. Your body still synchronizes to the world's schedule because it has to. But understanding that your natural rhythm is slower, longer, more patient than modern life allows, that understanding changes how you approach rest. The floor beneath you in a cave is a library. Each layer of sediment is a page documenting years, decades, sometimes centuries. The oldest layers at the bottom can be millions of years old, and they're all still there, perfectly preserved, waiting to be read by anyone who knows how to look. Sediment accumulates in caves slower than almost anywhere else on Earth. On the surface, wind and rain and biological activity constantly mix and disturb soil layers. 100 years of deposition can be churned and redistributed in a single storm. But in caves, protected from weather and most biological processes, sediment settles and stays settled. A layer deposited 10,000 years ago looks exactly the same today as it did the day it formed. This creates records of astonishing detail. Scientists can extract sediment cores from cave floors and read climate history going back hundreds of thousands of years. Each microscopic layer contains information about temperature, humidity, what plants existed on the surface above, what animals lived in the region. Pollen grains survive indefinitely in the stable cave environment. So do bone fragments, charcoal from ancient fires, tools dropped by humans who sheltered there millennia ago. The Denisovan Cave in Siberia contains sediment layers documenting 300,000 years of continuous history. 300,000 years. The same location, the same protected space, accumulating one thin layer after another through ice ages and warming periods, through the rise and fall of species, through the entire span of modern human evolution. The cave held all of it, preserved it all, forgot nothing. There's something deeply peaceful about this permanence. Everything you do on the surface will eventually be erased. Wind scatters, water washes away, plants grow over and break down whatever you build or leave behind. But what happens in caves stays. A footprint pressed into mud in a cave in France 30,000 years ago is still there, still clear, still showing the exact shape and size of the foot that made it. Time passes, but the record remains. Sleep in a space like this, and you're sleeping on top of history so deep it makes human civilization look like a brief moment. The ground beneath you has been collecting stories longer than your species has existed. Dust from climates that no longer exist. Minerals from chemical processes that took tens of thousands of years. Water that fell as rain when different stars dominated the night sky. Your mind understands this at some level deeper than conscious thought. You're lying on something more permanent than anything else you'll ever touch. The bed you sleep in at home is temporary. The building housing it is temporary. The city around it is temporary. But the sediment layers beneath you in a cave have outlasted entire epochs. They were there before, they'll be there after, and that stability communicates itself to your sleeping brain. People who study cave sediments describe it as reading a book with millions of pages, where each page is thinner than paper but more durable than stone, and you, lying on the most recent page, are part of that story now. Your presence becomes part of the record, your warmth and breath, and the tiny particles you shed joining the accumulation. 50,000 years from now, if someone cores this sediment, they might find traces of you in the layers. The deepest known cave on Earth descends 2,212 meters below the surface. That's over 1.1 miles straight down through solid rock. Veryovkina Cave in Georgia drops further than most mountains rise, and at its bottom, the world above might as well not exist. The weight of stone overhead is so immense that the concept stops meaning anything. You're not underground, you're inside the planet. Reaching these depths requires days of technical climbing, squeezing through passages barely wider than your body, rappelling down shafts where your headlamp can't find the bottom. But the people who make these journeys report something unexpected. The deeper they go, the calmer they feel. The more stone piled above them, the more at peace they become. This seems backwards, wrong, like they should feel increasingly trapped or anxious. Instead, they describe a growing sense of safety that peaks in the deepest chambers. Part of this is the absolute stability. At depths exceeding 1 kilometer, literally nothing changes. The temperature hasn't varied by a single degree in millions of years. The air pressure is constant. The humidity is constant. Sound behaves the same today as it did when these chambers first formed. There is no weather, no seasons, no day or night. Time itself seems to have stopped functioning normally. The silence at these depths is different from shallow cave silence. Sound waves at the surface, even in quiet caves, carry information from the world above. Vibrations from distant traffic, weather systems, human activity. These signals diminish with depth, but remain detectable in shallow caves. At 2,000 meters down, they're completely gone. The only sounds are the ones you make, and the geological sounds of the cave itself. The occasional drip of water or shift of rock that happens once every few hours. Your body responds to this depth in ways that surprise researchers. Blood pressure drops measurably. Stress hormone levels fall. Heart rate slows even during physical activity. The nervous system seems to recognize that at these depths, beneath this much protection, certain threat monitoring systems can power down. Nothing can reach you here. Not storms, not predators, not any danger that exists on the surface. You're as protected as it's possible for a human to be. There's also the simple fact of being inside solid rock. Not in a room carved from rock, but in natural voids within stone that's been compressed by the weight of mountains for millions of years. The rock around you exists under pressures that would crush most materials. The fact that these caves exist at all, that the rock hasn't collapsed and filled them, is a testament to the fundamental strength of the stone. You're surrounded by something strong enough to hold back the weight of the world. Sleep studies conducted in deep caves show patterns that don't occur anywhere else. People achieve REM sleep within minutes of closing their eyes, skipping the normal progression through lighter stages. Deep sleep stages last twice as long as normal. The body treats these environments as so inherently safe that it bypasses its normal cautious approach to vulnerability. At a mile beneath the surface, surrounded by rock older than complex life, your sleeping brain finally believes that nothing can threaten you. Archaeologists found bedding in a South African cave that's 77,000 years old. Not just evidence of sleeping, but actual constructed beds. Layers of sedge grass and rushes, carefully laid down and compressed by repeated use, with ash from fires spread on top to repel insects. Our ancestors weren't just collapsing wherever they got tired. They were building sleeping spaces with the same care and intention you use to make your bed today. The cave they chose wasn't random either. It sat at precisely the right depth from the entrance. Close enough to reach daylight quickly if needed. Far enough that temperature stayed stable and light didn't penetrate. The sleeping area was in an alcove, a natural indentation in the cave wall that created a sheltered space within the larger shelter. They were building boundaries within boundaries, layers of protection and enclosure that made sleep feel even safer. Similar patterns appear in caves across Europe, Asia, and Africa. Neanderthals in Spain chose specific chambers for sleeping and different chambers for other activities. The sleeping chambers were always smaller, always further from the entrance, always positioned where smoke from fires would vent out naturally, but warmth would remain. These weren't stupid decisions or random choices. These were people who understood exactly what conditions promoted good sleep, and they engineered their living spaces to create those conditions. The most revealing detail is wear patterns on cave floors. In sleeping areas, the rock shows smooth depressions from thousands of years of bodies lying in the same spots. People returned to the exact same sleeping locations generation after generation. They passed down knowledge of which spots were best, which sections of floor were most comfortable, keeps you anchored without demanding focus. Different spots in a cave have different drip rates. Some areas see drops every second or two, a relatively quick rhythm that resembles slow breathing. Others might go 30 seconds or a minute between drops, creating long stretches of silence punctuated by single, sharp sounds. The deepest chambers might have drops that fall once every few minutes. Events so spaced out that each one feels significant, a reminder that time is still passing, even though nothing else is changing. Scientists have tried to map drip patterns in caves and found something strange. The patterns aren't consistent over long periods, but they're not random either. They change with seasons, with rainfall above, with barometric pressure. A drip point that releases water every 3 seconds in winter might slow to every 8 seconds in summer as the water table shifts. The cave is responding to surface conditions in real time, but so slowly that the response takes weeks or months to complete. Sleep to this soundtrack, and your perception of time becomes flexible. The irregular rhythm prevents your brain from settling into the kind of steady counting it does with regular white noise. You can't predict when the next drop will fall accurately enough to create a mental clock. Instead, you exist in a state where time is marked but not measured, where events occur but without creating a sense of duration or pace. Ancient people sleeping in caves would have fallen asleep to these sounds every night. The particular rhythm of their sleeping chamber's drip pattern would have been as familiar to them as the sound of their own breathing. They would have known when the pattern changed, would have understood what that change meant about rain above or shifts in the cave's hydrology. The drops were information, comfort, and temporal anchor all at once, a natural sound that structured rest without demanding attention. Turn off every light in your house at night. Close all curtains. Shut yourself in a windowless room. You still won't experience cave darkness. Electronic devices glow. Light seeps under doors. Your eyes adjust, and eventually you can make out shapes, edges, the distinction between objects and empty space. Real darkness, the kind that exists in deep caves, is something else entirely. It's the complete absence of photons, and your brain has no framework for processing that. the human eye can detect a single photon under ideal conditions. That's the theoretical minimum of light, one particle of electromagnetic radiation hitting one receptor cell. In a deep cave, past the zone where any surface light penetrates, there are 0 photons. Not one, not occasionally. 0, constantly, forever. Your eyes dilate fully within minutes, opening your pupils as wide as they can go, trying to gather light that doesn't exist. The rods in your retina, the cells specialized for low light vision, go into maximum sensitivity mode, and they find nothing. After about 30 minutes, something shifts. Your eyes stop trying. The constant scanning and searching behavior ceases. Your pupils remain dilated, but your visual cortex begins to quiet. This is when the phosphenes start, those random flashes of light caused by your own neural activity rather than by external photons. But after a few hours, even those diminish. Your brain realizes it's wasting resources trying to see and begins shutting down visual processing systems that have no input to process. This shutdown is gradual and incomplete. You never go fully blind in the neurological sense, but your experience of vision changes fundamentally. Instead of seeing black, which is itself a visual perception, you begin to experience what researchers call visual nothingness. It's not a color, it's not the absence of color, it's the absence of the concept of vision itself. Your brain stops trying to create a visual model of the world around you because it has 0 data to work with. People who've spent days in absolute darkness report that when vision finally turns off, other senses don't just improve, they transform. Hearing becomes spatial in ways it normally isn't. You can locate sounds with precision that seems impossible, determining distance and direction from the subtlest acoustic cues. Touch becomes hyper-aware, able to distinguish textures and temperatures that would normally go unnoticed. Your proprioception, your sense of where your body is in space, sharpens to the point where you can navigate familiar cave passages in complete darkness without touching walls. This is your brain redistributing processing power. The visual cortex normally hogs about 30% of your sensory bandwidth. In absolute darkness, that capacity gets reallocated. Other sensory systems gain access to processing resources they've never had before. You don't just hear better, you think about sound differently. You don't just feel more, you understand touch as a primary rather than secondary sense. Sleep in this state is unlike any other sleep. Your brain doesn't need to maintain any visual processing systems at all. Even dreaming changes. Most people dream visually because vision dominates waking experience. But in extended cave darkness, dreams become primarily auditory and tactile. You dream in sounds and sensations rather than images. Your sleeping brain explores modes of experience that normally get suppressed by the dominance of sight. Rivers exist underground that have never seen sunlight, not rivers that start on the surface and sink into caves, but rivers born in darkness that flow through stone for miles before emerging somewhere downstream, if they emerge at all. Some never reach the surface. They flow into underground lakes, seep into deeper aquifers, become part of water systems that exist entirely within rock. These rivers are old beyond comprehension. The water flowing through them now fell as rain decades or centuries ago, filtered down through soil and stone so slowly that by the time it reaches the underground channel, it's been transformed. All organic matter has been filtered out. All sediment has settled. What remains is water so pure it's nearly distilled, carrying only dissolved minerals from the rock it's passed through. The ecosystems in these rivers are impossibly sparse. A few species of blind fish, translucent crustaceans, bacteria that survive on chemical energy rather than sunlight. These organisms have evolved in isolation for millions of years, cut off from surface life so completely that they've developed along entirely different paths. They're not just adapted to darkness, they're optimized for it, unable to survive anywhere light exists. The sound of an underground river is deceptive. It sounds like surface water, like flowing and movement, but the actual speed is much slower than it seems. Water appears to rush when you shine a light on it, but that's mostly because your eyes are tricked by the texture of the surface and the way light reflects. In reality, these rivers move at walking pace or slower. Their apparent energy an illusion, created by acoustics and limited visibility. Stand beside an underground river and you can feel it pulling heat from the air. The water, having spent decades underground at constant temperature, acts as a massive thermal sink. It cools the air immediately around it by several degrees, creating a microclimate that extends maybe 10 or 15 feet from the water's edge. This cooler zone becomes the most comfortable sleeping area in the cave, a natural air conditioning system powered by geological time rather than electricity. The rivers also generate negative ions, charged particles that form when water breaks against rock. These ions are the same ones that make the air near waterfalls feel fresh and energizing. But underground, the effect is different. The concentration is lower, the production is constant rather than turbulent, and the result is air that feels clean without feeling stimulating. It's calming in a way that surface water movement isn't, providing the benefits of flowing water without the alertness it normally triggers. Ancient peoples understood this and chose sleeping locations near underground streams when possible. They found spots where they could hear the water but weren't close enough to feel damp from spray or mist. The sound provided the auditory texture that made silence less absolute. The cooling effect kept them comfortable without requiring ventilation, and the negative ions created air quality that promoted deep rest. The rivers flow whether anyone is there to hear them or not. They've been flowing for longer than humans have existed, and will continue flowing long after. That permanence, that patient, endless movement through darkness, creates a backdrop of stability that your sleeping mind recognizes and trusts. The world above changes constantly, but down here, the river flows as it always has, as it always will. Air has weight, and the deeper you go, the more you feel it. Not dramatically, not like diving underwater where pressure changes quickly and obviously, but at depths of several hundred meters or more, the air pressure increases measurably, and your body registers this change in subtle ways that affect how you rest. Surface atmospheric pressure sits at about 14.7 pounds per square inch. Drop 1,000 feet into a cave, and that number increases by roughly half a pound. It doesn't sound like much, but your body notices. Your lungs find it slightly easier to extract oxygen from denser air. Your blood vessels experience fractionally more external pressure, which helps circulation without requiring your heart to work harder. The net effect is a sensation of being more physically present, more solid, more connected to the space around you. People describe this as feeling grounded, and the term is more literal than they realize. The increased pressure isn't coming from machinery or artificial systems. It's the actual weight of the atmosphere compressed by the stone above you, intensified by the fact that underground air can't expand outward the way surface air can. You're literally being pressed gently from all directions by air that's being held in place by billions of tons of rock. This pressure affects sleep in ways that aren't fully understood, but are consistently reported. People sleeping at depth describe feeling heavier, more anchored, less likely to startle awake from small disturbances. The physical sensation of pressure seems to communicate safety to the nervous system. Your body interprets the gentle compression as being held, supported, protected by something larger and stronger than itself. There's also a respiratory effect. The denser air means each breath delivers slightly more oxygen to your lungs without requiring deeper or faster breathing. Your respiratory rate naturally slows when you're not working to pull oxygen from thin air. This combines with the other cave factors we've discussed, the stable temperature and humidity, to create breathing that's maximally efficient with minimal effort. Barometric pressure at the surface changes with weather systems, rising and falling as high and low pressure zones move through. These changes affect sleep quality more than most people realize, particularly the transition periods when pressure is actively shifting. In deep caves, barometric pressure is stable. It doesn't respond to surface weather on any time frame that matters to human sleep. Your body never has to adjust, never has to compensate, never experiences that subtle destabilization that happens on the surface when a storm front moves in. The pressure also affects how sound travels, how air circulates, how your own voice resonates when you speak. Everything feels slightly different at depth, not wrong or uncomfortable, but distinct. Your body knows it's not on the surface anymore, knows it's surrounded by something solid and permanent and protective, and adjusts its baseline state of alertness accordingly. You've traveled deep tonight, through darkness and silence, through stone that remembers when the world was young, through deter that moves slower than thought. You've learned what your ancestors knew instinctively, that the best rest happens when you're held by something older and stronger than yourself. When you stop fighting the world's chaos and let the earth's patience surround you. Your bedroom isn't a cave. You can't recreate absolute darkness or perfect temperature stability or the weight of mountains pressing down protectively. But you understand now what your body is searching for when it struggles to rest. Stability, silence, darkness, the feeling of being contained and safe. These aren't luxuries. They're biological necessities that modern life has stripped away, replaced with artificial substitutes that almost work but never quite satisfy. The caves are still there, still breathing their slow breath, still holding darkness and silence, and all the conditions that made sleep possible for millions of years before electric lights and climate control. They're not going anywhere. the stalactites will continue growing their microscopic increments. The underground rivers will keep flowing their patient courses. The sediment layers will keep accumulating their impossibly thin pages of history. Time in caves moves at its own pace, indifferent to the frantic speed of surface life. And maybe that's the real lesson. Not that you should sleep in caves, though some do and swear by it, but that rest requires you to step out of the constant acceleration that defines modern existence. You need spaces, even if they're just mental spaces, where nothing is urgent, where change happens too slowly to track, where the only rhythm that matters is the one your body creates when it's finally allowed to slow down. Tonight, as you settle into sleep, think about that cave darkness, that absolute silence, that perfect stillness. Your bedroom has light seeping around curtains, and sound filtering through walls and air that won't stop moving. But your mind can create what your environment can't provide. You can imagine the weight of protective stone, the constancy of temperature, the patient darkness that existed before stars and will exist after they fade. Your body knows what it needs. It's been trying to tell you for years, every time you can't fall asleep despite being exhausted. Every time you wake up still tired despite sleeping 8 hours. It needs what caves provide: stability, protection, the absence of change, the presence of something eternal and unchanging and safe. If this journey into the Earth's sleeping chambers helped you understand your own need for rest a little better, do me a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe so tomorrow night we can explore another corner of the world designed for peace. And let me know in the comments what helps you sleep. What creates that feeling of safety your body craves? I read every comment, and I'd love to hear what works for you. Sleep well.